welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today, if you want to introduce yourself, we have on.
Yeah, my name is Pete Hoppins, and I am the owner of the Toffee Club pub in Southeast Portland and Away Days Brewing Co. and former Nike design director for global football for 13 years.
Yeah, you've been doing a bunch of stuff, a bunch of really cool stuff. I mean, I was looking you up and researching the stuff you contributed to. So I guess we should start with like where you grew up. Where did you grow up in early childhood?
Yeah, so I grew up in the suburbs of Liverpool, I guess. It's a place called the Wirral, which is like a peninsula. So you have to take a ferry or a tunnel over to the Wirral. It's kind of like, let's say it's like the Beaverton of Portland.
Okay.
Or maybe a bit posher than that. I don't know. Maybe
is it a tunnel like underground or over?
Yeah, a tunnel underground. It's like one of the original, it's one of the first tunnels that had like a train through it back in the Victorian times. Yeah, there's a famous song called Ferry Across the Mersey that you should check out.
That must have made you feel pretty cool though. Like was that cool? Like as a kid going through a tunnel to like go to your house?
Yeah, it's pretty cool experience. But you can also take the ferry. I think when did they build the tunnel? Early 80s, I think.
Okay.
So when I was super young, we used to take the ferry over, and I remember my grandmother. She lived just on the other side of Liverpool, where the ferry kind of departs, and she took me to for my, I think my 7th birthday on a trip over to Liverpool, kind of big, special occasion. And we go over on the ferry, and she's kind of old school. And anyway, the ferry gets to the other side, and then the ferry starts taking off again, and we started going back the other way. And she was waiting for someone to like disembark her off the ferry.
Yeah, like escort her off. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So we did the trip 3 times. So
to go back again. Yeah, that's amazing. So, were you involved in like football from an early age? Did you play, and like was that something you were interested in always? Yeah,
I mean, as a kid growing up in England, and especially in the northwest of England, that's just kind of like what you do. So yeah, I was playing football from a really early age, like 4 or 5 years old, and then kind of got into supporting kind of one of the local teams, which my team was Everton. And then I used to go to the games with my kind of best friend back then. His dad had a season ticket, so we used to go to watch the match. As I kind of got older, I started playing other sports, rugby, cricket. But I've always been interested in sport in general. But football's been a kind of constant kind of throughout my life, whether as a fan or just playing. I still play today. As
a kid growing up then, was that something that you foresaw in the future? Like you wanted to work in sports and like you wanted to go down that road however way you could?
Not really. I think when I was, when you're a kid, you don't really know what you want to do or what kind of jobs there are out there. It's kind of traditional jobs that you see your parents or your other friends' parents doing. But I actually went to a pretty traditional kind of all boys English school, kind of like Hogwarts, but without the magic and without the girls. Actually, it really sucked. So from there, those kind of schools, it was a grammar school, so you take a test to get in when you're like 11 years old. And those schools try to basically get you into the best university possible. So it's kind of like an academic school, basically.
Sure.
But pretty quickly I realized that I was like not as academic as the other kids who were getting bussed into the area. I was more interested in art and design. So when I was 18, I didn't know what to do in terms of a career. So I actually went to art school for a year in Liverpool at John Moores University, where actually John Lennon attended that school. That kind of gave me a foundation in art and design and photography and graphics and fashion and kind of everything. Actually, I lived at home during that time as well. So it actually allowed me to still continue playing sports for like my local teams. And then I went to various different universities to take a look around, different courses. And one of the courses that I was interested in doing was industrial design. And there's a course in Newcastle that Jonathan Ives, the famous, is it Sir Jonathan Ives? He's the designer behind all the Mac products.
Oh, okay.
So I actually went to look at that school specifically, and then when I was there, they actually had an open day for a fashion course. And I was kind of interested in fashion at the time, but I thought, I'll just go and check this course out.
Sure.
And I was like, you know what? Instead of like hanging out with like a bunch of dudes all day talking about product design, I'm gonna go to the one with all the girls. So that was like my decision process on that one. And yeah, everyone thought I was pretty crazy, but that was kind of like definitely what kind of set me off on my kind of design path career. From there, it was starting to really kind of like having a different take on the fashion industry and looking at it from a sportswear angle, which people weren't really doing at the time. And so by the time I graduated 4 years later, having done a year in London in the industry, the streetwear industry as it is kind of as what we know it is now, that had kind of like really started to kind of blossom. It was like the first kind of generation of all those streetwear brands like Stussy, and I don't think even Supreme was in existence then, but so that was kind of like my niche.
Were you doing all this stuff before? Because you talked about like wanting or going to art school. Were you drawing and like doing things like that growing up too, and like designing?
Yeah, I mean that was my thing. It was like I was skipping maths class and going to either go and playing football or rugby or drawing. That was like my thing.
Oh, okay.
So, but I don't think when I was a kid I didn't really think that there was a viable career in combining sport and kind of like design and fashion. That just wasn't really in my scope at the time. And then I just kind of like eventually kind of fell into it when I took a job for Nike in Amsterdam. Before that, I was in London for 6.5 years, and I worked for like a streetwear brand called Box Fresh, who were, I guess they were like the English equivalent of like a Stussy or a Supreme kind of brand.
Sure.
Back then, we had like a few stores dotted around the UK and in Japan, and distributed kind of around the world. So it actually gave me an opportunity to work in a really small team, but like travel the world and work on all sorts of different product types, from t-shirts to knitwear to denim to doing collaborations. But that was very much before the internet and Instagram and all that stuff kind of existed. So it was kind of really at the kind of forefront and the kind of first pass at what we know as the streetwear industry today.
Yeah. And I mean, I've heard you talk before about like streetwear and like sports basically having more of like a streetwear presence or just like a fashion presence in general. When you first started at like Nike, was that the case for football or not at all? And how did you sort of turn it into that?
At the time, when I first joined Nike in Amsterdam, I was working on, they used to call it SMU, special makeup. So I was designing specifically for Nike, but it was like special made product for one of the big UK retailers who were like called JD Sports, and they were at the kind of the forefront of, I guess, like sportswear culture. They were kind of bringing that streetwear kind of sensibility and combining it with sport. And they were a really successful brand, and they still are. They have stores all over the world. And really my job was just to kind of take the Nike brand and kind of produce product specifically for them. 2 years later, Nike had a big reorg and moved me and a bunch of other designers and product developers over to the US, and really kind of made, I guess, what we were doing then, which was sportswear, into its own specific category. Which now is Nike's biggest category. That's what it's really known for.
Right.
Like sport, like the wider sportswear kind of look and feel.
Yeah. What was it doing back then? Because I mean, that's all I know Nike for, really. You know,
it was just pure sport back then.
Oh, okay.
So it was like running, football, tennis, basketball, what we think of like retro, and like the lifestyle of those sports really has just kind of evolved over the past, whatever it is, like 10, 15 years.
So when you moved to Portland for that sort of reorg and restructure, is that when you got a team together and started designing like the kits and like the uniforms and things that people were wearing?
When I first came over here, I was part of this sportswear team, the lifestyle team. I was like a junior designer, I guess, pretty much back then. And then I became design director of soccer, or global football, we call it at Nike. Probably like 2015, around then.
Okay.
That's when Nike kind of like saw the opportunity to take sportswear, or like the lifestyle kind of component of the brand, and kind of combine it with the sports categories. So you would have, taking soccer, for example, you would make that into a full lifestyle brand as well as performance. Yeah, it was kind of crazy because at the time there wasn't really much of a plan. It was just like, we think there's an opportunity to build lifestyle brands or a lifestyle component to each of our individual sports that we pay all these athletes to promote our products. So let's get after it. And yeah, I was like, okay. So, and then from then, things started to develop, and, the football category within Nike became more of an established, business in itself. And then my role was really to kind of create a direction for the designers in the team. And that ranged from like high performance kind of on pitch to the lifestyle of that sport. And then, I would be working with my brand marketing partners, the business partners, to kind of align on the bigger direction and strategy for Nike Football, and then just make sure that my designers were then translating that direction through the product that they were designing.
Yeah, because it's interesting, like seeing that growth while you were there in Nike in that specific category of like football. Did you notice that it coincided with any other? Because I mean, football was always big in Europe and has always been big, but like here it's growing seemingly at a more rapid rate. Was that a big driver as well? Is that like it was more, since you were in the United States, there was more people that were interested in every single year, it seemed like in football?
The aim has never really been to capture the US market from a football lifestyle point of view. I think it was more around creating a global kind of look of the lifestyle of football. I guess if you compare it to what happened with basketball in the late 80s and through to the mid 90s, you saw the culture around basketball was connected with lifestyle, with fashion, with music, and that became or developed into a whole entire industry. And then the opportunity was to do something similar with football. We saw it. I keep on switching between football and soccer, so you'll have to
it's fine. Yeah.
You'll have to just follow me there.
Yeah,
but we could already see that there were pockets of design and music and fashion starting to inform what was happening in the world of football. But it's always been kind of very specific to certain countries. Like the UK has a very specific look and feel to the look of football.
Yeah.
And that's kind of based on the fans who go to the game, and it's called terrace culture. And that has a very distinctive look and feel, and a kind of music that people are into, and etc., and lifestyle. But we could also see pockets of newness happening kind of all around the world. So I think along with, I guess, the exposure that a lot of these younger players were having through social media and becoming more tuned into fashion, music, lifestyle, we saw that there was an opportunity there to really kind of capture that and kind of like almost like ride that wave, as it were.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean there, because it's like, it's almost, it's almost weird to think about it separately, because like if you think about your basketball, for example, it's like when you think about basketball, you think about like the fashion, you think about the music associated with it, but it's just like, it's so ingrained in it all that you don't even think about that at one point basketball was not like that. It was just a sport that they played, And
I think football was like that until pretty recently, really. And, it's still trying to figure out what its association is with music and fashion. But I think you're getting a lot more of the younger generation of players are a lot more comfortable with being on social media and being into fashion and design and music. And it's coming from a more natural place that's also new and fresh. Whereas I think in the past it was very kind of rigid.
Yeah.
And footballers were like, you're a footballer first. Kind of what you do in your free time.
It's up to you,
It's something else completely.
Yeah.
But now these players, and also it's also, the globalization of everything is kind of allowing footballers and basketball players, they're all kind of in the same social networks, they're all hanging out together. They're all listening to the same music now. There's some nuances there depending on the country. Yeah, it's a really interesting time. And then, you've also got in football, there's a really interesting thing happening at like more of a grassroots level and like at a street level where, young players or creatives who are into football are kind of going against the grain of these multinational corporations, which are football clubs today. And saying, hey, why can't football kits be cool? Or why can't the jacket I wear represent kind of the things that I'm into, which is football?
Yeah, and so when you were a part of the team, like designing kits and stuff like that, one of them I read took 2 years to create, which is crazy. I mean, it was really cool, the Nigerian ones for the World Cup. What is like the timeline usually for if a team like Liverpool, for example, was like, hey, we're contracted with Nike, we want new jerseys for 2021, how long does that usually take?
Yeah, well, the Liverpool one's an interesting one because when Nike signed Liverpool, we literally had to design that in like a week. but the process of a kit from start to finish, like it actually being in stores, that usually does take around 2 years and maybe even longer. But the process usually is like you start with the kind of innovation side of things, and like insights. So Nike has a team of folks going out and working with players, coaches, clubs on what the players actually need to perform best. That is then briefed back into a design team who will then design and develop like the best fabric and kit of parts for the kind of, I guess you call the template for the kit design. They might produce 10 different kind of design variations of that kit template. Those templates then get passed over to a team of a team of designers who are assigned to each club or country. And then those designers will take that template and work with that club or country to kind of instill the country or club's, I guess, vibe or feeling or history or whatever it is going to be, or colours onto that template. From there, we have like a series of design reviews and check-ins internally just at Nike. I mean, we're pretty rigorous with like how we actually go through that process and the feedback that we give. And then when we're ready with the final design, we'll send that to the club or the country. That club or country will then approve or not approve that design. And then from there, it kicks into manufacturing. So it's a pretty kind of like long process. The actual like design time it takes to design a specific kit for a club might be, a few weeks.
Okay.
But the whole entire process, usually takes at least 2 years.
So being like an Evertonian and like an Everton supporter, when you got the Liverpool kit for like a week, you're like, just give them whatever. Like, let's just make it black, all red, whatever,
Just like, as long as we can get some blue on there.
Just weave it in there, put it in the stitching a little bit. They'll never know.
That was an interesting one, because obviously a lot of my friends still live in Liverpool, or even friends here who are Liverpool fans. So there was a lot of pressure to kind of make sure that one was as good as it could possibly be. But it was tricky, because the first designs we did, we kind of went on. We didn't have anything to go on. We actually were doing it in secret, because the deal wasn't public yet. Liverpool were in a legal dispute with New Balance, who were their former supplier. So we were kind of designing this kit without really anything to go on. We were like, hey, just checking in with like some fans that we know and using our own knowledge. But, sometimes those kits where you're under pressure in terms of time and you just kind of go with what your gut is, usually sometimes those ones come out the best.
When did the transition come from working at Nike then to deciding and wanting to sort of go out on your own and do like an entrepreneurial opening of a pub?
Yeah, so I've always had this idea of, or dream of owning a pub, wherever that may be, Portland, UK, anywhere. That's always been like a retirement dream almost. And then I just felt like we've been in Portland for 6 or 7 years, and we were like, okay, we're gonna live here for a good while. But what we're missing really is a really good pub to like kind of call our home away from home.
Sure. And
Portland's got some amazing restaurants and bars, but it doesn't really have what you'd call a proper pub or like a pub culture. And what I mean by that is like a place where you can go in there and watch football, then see your friends, then another group of friends come in, you can have some food, then there's a DJ, and you can just basically hang out there. The bartender knows your name. You can bring your kids in there. It's like just a real community hub, and there's kind of like a culture around pubs in the UK that it just doesn't really exist in the US. So that was literally like, it's always was kind of in the back of my head of like, that's what I would love to kind of create one day. And then I don't know, I just got out the sketch pad and just started like thinking about ideas and what it could be. And then my brother ended up moving here in 2015, I think it was. And then it was like, okay, well, what are you going to do for a job, Jack? And we basically were like, okay, well, maybe actually we could start to think about bringing that pub dream of mine, and now my brother's and my wife's, to life. My wife was working she was a project manager for a design agency called Ziva in Portland, and we just had our first child, and she didn't really want to go back to full-time work and was looking for something different to do. So we kind of had all these thoughts and ideas, and then from there we just started to basically distill the idea down of like, okay, what about an English pub that's kind of football focused, but it's a place where you would want to go even if there was no football on. So it's not a sports bar, and it's not just a straight up pub. It's like a combination of those two things. So we had this idea, and it just kind of developed into a business plan. And then at some point, I think we told enough people about this idea, and we kind of convinced ourselves like it was a good idea to do, which in hindsight was crazy thing to do. And then
still a good idea though. Yeah.
Maybe. So we had this concept, and then as I'm still working at Nike, so I only just left Nike like 3-4 months ago.
Oh, wow.
We're like, okay, well, let's do this. Nicky can be the general manager. Jack, my brother, he's run bars before. He can be the bar manager. I'll help out with design. We know a bunch of people at Nike who might come and drink here. Then we started looking around for venues, and then we found this spot on Lower Hawthorne, which is basically a warehouse. Well, it was like a warehouse and a former strip club, knocked together.
Good tie-in.
into one unit. Yeah, we're like, that's the spot. And it was literally just like a black building with nothing in it, and with these like really cool industrial roll-up doors. So it wasn't really like an traditional English pub. It didn't have any like features that could be translated to English. So we had to kind of build that in, and and we designed and built the whole thing completely from scratch, which was kind of crazy experience because we literally had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah.
So we just pulled in as many people who did and kind of created the vision that we had on paper.
What were some of the elements that you added in that you wanted to put in there?
Oh, there was literally nothing in there. So we literally built a full-out kitchen from scratch. We built, what do you put in a restaurant kitchen? I have no idea.
I don't either. I would be a bad person for the job.
HVAC, grease traps,
something like that.
Beer lines. Every single thing was built completely from scratch. So that was like, looking back on it, was an amazing but ridiculously expensive experience. If anyone's listening who's interested in opening a bar or restaurant, I would recommend finding something that already is a bar or restaurant, giving it a lick of paint.
That's a good advice. Good business advice for sure. No, because you talked about like the English parts that you added in. What were those like specifically, like a little more English features?
I think one of the bar itself, we brought in, it has like a copper finish to the top, which is kind of pretty traditional English style bar top. We brought in a bunch of wood paneling and wood beams, and then we had exposed beams on the roof as well, which were actually already there. So we just tried to highlight and bring in more warmth and texture to the place. But it really kind of ended up with a kind of mashup between a kind of traditional English pub and like an industrial southeast Portland warehouse. That was kind of what we ended up with. And then I think from there, really, actually, I look back at some of the photos from when we first opened. It was really bare bones. And I think what our idea was that we would add to it over time, like an actual pub would, because I think we felt that the restaurant or bar scene in the US, actually, all over the world, to be honest, was becoming kind of homogenized, where it was like a copy cutter kind of experience. So, okay, we're going to come up with a bar theme around Prohibition. This is what a Prohibition bar looks like. Boom.
Yeah.
Here it is. And there's no real story or behind it. Nothing is allowed to develop over time. It's just like, that's what it is. And if you like that kind of thing, that's cool. If you don't, you don't. We wanted ours to like develop over time. We're still putting new pictures up and photos and art or scarves or whatever. But no, I think that's how you can kind of create some more story behind the detail in the space.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and there's a bar there called At Random that was very much like that, where it was built in like the 60s or 50s. You could only pay with cash there. It was very unique, but then someone bought it out and then changed it into something that it was less cool.
It's interesting. Pre-pandemic, I've definitely felt that I've been more drawn back to the more quirky, old kind of bars and restaurants, like places like the Slammer or, like all those kind of like random kind of spots where you feel like someone has spent some time and considered this stuff, and it's just like allowed to develop over time without like being too influenced by trends.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. So where did I know where the name the Toffee Club came from, but was there any other names that you considered, or was that a slam dunk for you?
It was like one of the first names on the list of many names, but it was just the one that stuck. So for those who don't know, the Toffee Club is the Toffees are the nickname for my favourite football team, Everton. And so back in the Victorian times, there was a lady who used to give out candies before the games. And they're called Everton mints. You can still buy them today. Actually, they had them in Market Choice the other day for some crazy reason. But they're basically like black and white striped, like hard-boiled candies, and then mint on the outside. And then when you get to the middle, they're a toffee, like a chewy toffee. And so the lady who used to hand out these toffee mints kind of became the club kind of mascot, as it were. And then the nickname, the Toffees, was given to Everton or people who support Everton. So that just was like, I don't know, it just was like, okay, the Toffee Club. Cool, that sounds cool. People might think the name's cool, and there's a deeper meaning to it. If you know, you know. If you don't, you can learn it, and we can have fun with the branding and stuff like that.
Yeah, and with the design, how did you approach that? Like going from just having a name and a new business and designing like how the entire thing will look and artistically how it will look.
We didn't want it to be too branded.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Even though it kind of has turned into a brand. Yeah, that's been just finding the right balance. I put together a presentation, I guess, for myself in a way where it's like, I'm so used to building presentations at Nike that I automatically just build a presentation for everything. But within that presentation, there's kind of like some guidelines and some design work, like the original font, the font that we used for the Toffee Club wording is from an old Everton match day program. So there's little details like that. We tried to keep the color palette to like black, white, and gold for no other reason than that's just a cool color combination. We made like a hanging sign, like a traditional hanging sign outside the pub. Like most traditional English pubs will have a hanging sign, and they're all hand painted. So we actually employed a guy to do a traditional kind of like hand painted sign, and then we asked a friend of ours to model based on some images that we found of like the original Toffee lady. So she was alive before there was cameras, so it's just like a bunch of like inspiration and illustrations.
Sure.
So we sent her these pictures. She dressed up like the Toffee lady. We gave it a bit of a modern twist, took some pictures, and had this guy hand paint the sign based on those pictures. And if you look closely at the sign, it's actually slightly different on both sides just because it is hand painted.
That's cool though. Those little details are what make a difference, I feel like.
And I think that those were the things that we wanted to. We didn't want to be super flash with like bold branding everywhere because that's not what an English pub would have. But we wanted to really focus on the little details. Like all the tables in the Toffee Club have little plaques with players' names on them. So each table is named after a player. All the numbers, when we're giving out food, people take a number to their table. Each of the numbers are done in a famous number font from a famous player's back of the jersey.
Sure.
So it's just, I think it's all those little details that kind of really add up to the whole experience.
Do you have like a very small Landon Donovan table, like somewhere in the back for his brief play?
There's no Landon Donovan table. There should be, yeah.
It's just a tiny little one.
No, it was cool because we, when it was the Women's World Cup, 2019, we switched out all the player names to famous female football players, and we over the last 2 or 3 years have really focused on trying to grow the women's game. Just at least create a community around kind of fan support here in Portland. The fans who are coming in would see that detail and that for them, you've got them hooked then, that's like something that's really speaking to someone on a kind of personal level, that you paid attention to women's football, and like you're kind of like really kind of exciting and speaking to them individually.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Yeah, the only two players that I know that have played for Everton are Tim Howard and Landon Donovan.
Yeah,
so.
we have a picture of Tim Howard in the pub.
Okay.
He's actually been to the Toffee Club. But,
oh, really?
Yeah, I wasn't there, unfortunately, when he came in. I think who was he playing for over here when he was just before he retired? I think he came in after a game.
Yeah, the Colorado Rapids or maybe somebody like that. Yeah. But yeah, that'd be weird to like see yourself in a pub, like a picture of you.
Yeah, it's funny because it's a picture of him looking sad as well. So I think he's just let in like 5 goals or something.
His worst game, yeah. He
got beat by Portland, then went to the Everton pub, saw a picture of himself having let in 5 goals for Everton.
Yeah. So like. But building that community and stuff like that from scratch must have been like really hard too. And it's such a big part of like not only restaurants and bars, but businesses in general. So how'd you like go about like cultivating that and trying to draw people into the community? Yeah,
the community aspect is just something that's kind of developed over time. We didn't set out to let's build a football community in Portland.
Yeah.
But over the few years that we were open, it became like the main thing. I would say, it was interesting. I think when we first opened, people would come in to the pub and just kind of look around and just be like, "What is this? I don't get this." And literally look around and just like walk out, or they would come in and be like, "Do you guys sell toffee?" and then walk out. So it was. Oh man, that first year was tough. We were really trying to almost like educate people on what this kind of experience was supposed to be about.
Yeah.
But I think the football side of things, helped us kind of develop the community through our commitment to showing all the games that we showed, getting up at like 4:30 in the morning and showing those super early matches, even if like 10 people showed up. That commitment shows that you're in it for the love of it rather than just to make a buck.
Right.
So those little things really kind of added up. We've done a lot of street football tournaments. We've partnered with Rose City Football, with the futsal pitches up in Northeast, to create various football events. We sponsor Street Soccer PDX, which is a local football charity. We have 6 or 7 football teams ourselves just within.
Oh wow!
Football team. So we have a men first team, over 30s, over 40s, over 50s, women's team, co-ed team, futsal team. So you've got. That's 150 people just there.
Yeah.
So, and then we run our own football league called the Toffee League in the summer, which is, I think we were up to 16 different teams from all around Portland playing that league every summer, which we run, which is a whole other kind of crazy experience for the folks who join that. It's just basically we're just bringing the party to the football. So. You're doing those things. We've done block parties. We did a massive thing for World Cup in 2018, Women's World Cup in 2019. So, all those individual events and experiences kind of all add up to what creates a community. It doesn't just like happen through Instagram like that.
Right.
It's hard work, but if that's what you love and you're into, and you get joy from other people having a good time, that's the most kind of rewarding part about it.
Yeah, I think it separates too the people that are just in it for the money and people who are in it because they want to be in it. I mean, that first year, if it's tough and you're not making that much money and no one's coming in, it's hard to do that if you don't love it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I still stayed at my Nike for so long, because it's like hemorrhaging money. What are you doing?
So how long was it till you opened the brewery from when you opened the Toffee Club?
Yeah, so Toffee Club, we opened in spring of 2016.
Okay.
And then Away Days Brewing opened in the summer of 2019. So the brewery is attached to the Toffee Club. So it's the same landlord. It's the same building. And it was actually a brewery here before called Scout Brewing. And Scout, they opened at the same time as we opened the Toffee Club. When the landlord actually kind of converted the building from like a warehouse and a strip club into these kind of two units. And Scout let us know they were going to close their doors. Early 2019 or late 2018, and they just contacted us. They would, would you be interested in taking over the space? And at the time, we were like, no way. We've got enough on our hands. And sure enough, like, start thinking about it. I'm just like, okay, actually, maybe this is an opportunity. And before you know it, I built another presentation.
Yeah.
It's like, and Away Days was born. But we were dabbling in beer making in the Toffee Club. We'd done a few collaboration beers with some local breweries. We actually did a beer with a brewery called Culmination in Northeast Portland, and that was actually called Away Days, that beer.
Oh,
so we and that was like our best-selling beer in the Toffee Club. So we contacted them and we're like, hey, like, do you mind if we take the name and set up our own little brewery next door? And they were extremely gracious and we're cool with that, and we're still good friends with those guys. We took that name and kind of built out the space for me Scout. So this is where we learned from our mistake from Toffee Club, in that we could take over a space and really it was more of an aesthetic lift and like a rebrand as opposed to building out something completely from scratch. The first thing we did was hired a brewer. We hired a guy called Marshall from Alameda Brewing. They'd just gone out of business. We interviewed a bunch of brewers, but he was just someone who we kind of clicked with and were aligned on the vision. And that was the best thing we ever did, because this guy is amazing. So, and then from there, I don't know, how long did it take us to build this place out? A few months to build this place out. We wanted to be ready for the summer of 2019 because we knew there was like the Women's World Cup happening, and we would have like a big foot traffic coming to the Toffee Club. So we kind of wanted to kind of coincide opening Away Days with that. So that was the plan. And then, everything was going great until March last year. That was that. Yeah.
So how did you decide which way you wanted to go? Was it basically because you can brew all different styles of beer in all different ways? Like, how did you figure that out and where you wanted to take it?
With Away Days, it's connected to the Toffee Club, literally.
Right.
It's next door, but also, it's the owners of the Toffee Club. So there's always going to be like that football and English connection just through, the fact that we're associated with both places. But we wanted to have Away Days be a little bit more clear around what the brand was before we actually kind of almost like opened it. So I think the branding and the environment of the space and the beer we're putting out and the can labels that we design, it's definitely a lot more sharper than the Toffee Club. The Toffee Club, we want to just evolve over time. And it's more of a community hub, where as Away Days is like you're producing an actual product.
Right.
Not only people are going to drink in your bar, but they're going to drink in other people's bars, in a football stadium, from a supermarket. So your brand has to be a lot tighter. And in terms of beer direction, that was pretty simple. It's European inspired, but Portland made. All our beers are pretty sessionable, but they're all sessionable. Like that was always been our plan, is that you can come and drink 3 or 4, not just one hot bomb, and stumble home and have a stomachache later. This is like all our beers are like super clean, all sessionable, and just have really good balance to them. So we've been like really well aligned with our brewer from the start, and we're over the moon with like how well it's going so far.
Yeah, and you talked about this a little bit before, but what is it like working with your family? Like how is that dynamic? Like, do you enjoy it? Is it hard sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, we probably spend a little bit too much time together. But,
Sure.
It's like it's funny. Me and my wife kind of joke about it now, because we were literally like passing ships a year ago. Like, I was working at Nike. She was, trying to keep Toffee Club alive. We had away days going. We got 2 kids at home, and you're just like, we're just in this massive whirlwind, and barely seeing each other. And now it's like we spend like all the time together. But it's great actually, because between myself, Nikki, my wife, and Jack, my brother, we all kind of bring something different to the table. Like I'm the creative, Nikki's the organizer, and Jack's like the personality behind the brand. He's the guy behind the bar that people come and see. So between the 3 of us, and then we have Marshall, who's knocking out amazing beer. So there's 4 of us in this like kind of day-to-day family almost. It's working out well.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's like, because if it was like, if tensions were high, that would be bad news, because you'd be like, oh, can you believe what this person said to me at work today? Oh, you're that person. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been good. It's been good for us to all kind of spend a bit more time together and be more honest with each other about what it is we're doing, or what we're trying to do. And, I think this has given us a bit of time to like pause and reflect. And, Toffee Club's actually, it's been closed since August last year. So we're actually, hopefully we're looking at reopening this summer. So it's actually allowing us to reflect and kind of come with a new plan of how we want to reopen, and like how we can work better as a business, and what we really want to spend our time and focus on. If we want to continue to focus on community, then that means we need to who do we need to bring in to help us run the day-to-day, so we can work on that stuff.
Yeah.
If Away Days Brewing is kind of like, it's going to be more successful, then how do we need to structure our team? Because I think before we were just going at everything, right, 100 miles an hour, and just adding and adding and adding, and it wasn't very efficient. So this is going to allow us to like be more efficient and just have a better balance in our lives, I think.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's a very awesomely positive way to look at it too. So I haven't been there yet, because I moved here in October. So, but once you guys reopen, I will come for sure. Hopefully with my vaccination at that point. Yeah,
well, I think we're not going to open until everyone's vaccinated. Basically, that's the plan. I think the Toffee Club only really works when it's like it's full, right? Everyone's having a good time. We did open in this. We closed for a bit. Was it March, April, May, and then we opened back up under the capacity rules, but it just didn't work, financially, but also like for everybody's kind of mental health and safety as well. It just wasn't working.
If people are interested, because that date is flexible, obviously, where can they go to like find out when you guys are opening and like updates and things like that? Yeah,
go to toffeeclubpdx.com and sign up for the newsletter. But everything will be communicated on there or on our Instagram handle. We've actually if you go onto our website, there's a newsletter sign up, and we're actually kind of sending like a monthly newsletter out from, it's basically like a Toffee Club and Away Days newsletter. And it's just like latest news, beer releases, updates. Yeah, that's the best way to kind of like keep up to date. Yeah, and then Instagram, Toffee Club. It's pretty sporadic at the moment, but hopefully it'll get back up running soon.
And for Away Days, what's the website for that?
awaydaysbrewing.com.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting. It's been awesome to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.